If you have a pension and want to retire early, then this one is going to be for you. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Heart-Centered Money Conversations. If you're brand new to this channel and this series, welcome. We're very excited that you're here. And so Heart-Centered Money Conversation is a series that we've been running on YouTube here for financial wellness. And those of you who don't know me, my name is Plahuta. I'm an emotional clearing practitioner. And this is one of my amazing friends, Kristen Mabee, who's a financial coach here in Ontario. And so, like I had mentioned, this episode is going to be all about pensions. So if you don't want to wait to live until you retire and you want to live more now in the present moment, if you want to have more control or say over your finances and not just blindly trust what you've been conditioned to believe is the only path, or maybe you're close to retirement and have had some life circumstances such as mental or emotional challenges come up and are looking for alternate options to make the most out of your pension. Or maybe you're just here because you want to educate yourself more on your pension. Then welcome. Buckle up because this is going to be a really great episode and it may be a little bit of a longer one. But Kristen is going to dive into a lot of juicy details here. And our whole intention with this episode and all of the episodes is for you to be more educated on this topic. And it's not to give you advice or to make up your mind for you. It's really to just provide you with more information so that you can really make the best decisions for you and your family moving forward. So thank you so much for being here with us. And without further ado, I will let you take it away, Kristen.
Awesome. Thanks so much for the introduction, Laura.
You're welcome.
We're going to talk about wills. Wills was last episode. We're going to talk about pensions today. So I think this is a really good opportunity to just be really open-minded around pensions, whether you have a pension or you're looking for a position that has a pension, and just really understanding the ins and outs, how they work. Because a lot of times what I find is people don't know their options around their pensions, and they only really hear kind of what their work tells them about pensions, which isn't necessarily the whole story, right? So we're here to just kind of open up, break some of those barriers. And we really were conditioned, or a lot of people were conditioned, go to school, get a good job with a pension, right? Secure for life, right? They say it's the golden ticket or cash for life. But what if it's not? Like, what if it's not the best option? And that's what we're going to explore today is what are your options? And what if you could retire early? Because every single person that I talk to, they're like, I want to retire tomorrow, right? So I have this one client, I absolutely love them, but every time we meet, they're like, can we retire yet? It's 37, like
Is
they're
it time
getting
yet? Is it
there.
time yet?
Yeah.
Are we there?
They're getting they're getting there, but they're also somebody who has a pension, so where they're a lot closer than they think, right? Which is really, really exciting. So we really want to look at different options, and the two different options around pensions are taking it monthly or taking it in a lump sum, which can feel really scary, but we're going to show you kind of why you want to consider these different options. But before I even dive into that, I know, Laura, you used to work as a paramedic, and I'd love if you can kind of share a little bit around your experience with pensions or some stories you've heard around pensions.
Yeah, for sure. Well, when I worked as a paramedic, I was there for only 3 years. So it was a very easy option for me because I was going into having my own business around taking my money out of the pension. So for me personally, it was a very easy decision for that. But when I got started with the job, and even like growing up, right, my parents were always like, get a job with pension and benefits and all these things. And it was kind of seen as like that golden ticket, which obviously isn't what I'm doing right now, but that's a different story. But in that, when I went into the job, like it was just kind of like that was kind of the security. And there, either I didn't actually look at the information that was given to me about pensions, which is very possible because you're given so much stuff during orientation and stuff like that, or it just wasn't really like I wasn't walked through what it was all about, and I
Right.
think too, because it is like, it's so far in the future, you're like, this is like 35, 40 years. Like, I think I remember what I was cashing mine out. It was like, you can retire in 36 or 2046 or something like that. And I was like, whoa, that's a long time.
Yeah.
So it wasn't even something that I was really considering at that point. But I love that we're doing this episode because there are a lot of people, and I know people personally, specifically paramedics, who are very close to retirement. And it's a common story that you hear where their mental challenges come up or emotional challenges come up from stuff on the job or even other situations that they're experiencing in their life, where they're kind of sitting in this position of like, oh my gosh, like, should I take early retirement? I'm going to lose all this money. Should I just like man up and just go back to work for those, say, 6 years, which is very dicey because a lot of things can happen in that 6 years in specifically that job, right? So it's nice to really know the various options that are there. And obviously, like Kristen said as well, like there's numerous different scenarios that everybody may be moving through. So this is very specific to you and what you're moving through. So Kristen's just gonna share kind of like the main stuff in this. And then obviously if you want at the end, you can hop on with Kristen and get more information specific for what you're moving through.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. I really appreciate it. And I remember one of the things that you said when we were talking was that it was almost like you were told not to ask questions,
Oh,
right?
100%. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Yeah.
They just
Yeah.
don't want you to know, or like, I'm gonna go through kind of what different options are and like why you might not know these things,
Yeah. I think in
right?
like any like corporate kind of roles, there's like nobody wants you to answer questions. If you're somebody that asks questions, it's almost like you're like a burden. Like you're the troublemaker where if
Yeah.
you ask those questions. I remember that like even when I was working my job, like if you were somebody who like was going to the union or questioning things or like all this stuff, like you would kind of be like people would talk about you behind your back, and it's not something nice, which questions are totally welcomed. Questions are amazing. So if you do have any
Ask all the
questions throughout
questions.
the episode, put them all in the comments. They're all welcome here.
Awesome. Yeah, I think it's really interesting. And that's kind of what we've seen is a lot of the times when I have these conversations with people around pensions, they just have no idea that this is an option for them.
Mhm.
So I'm going to preface this before I even jump into it that, what I'm going to talk about is for a lot of pensions in Ontario. Each pension is a little bit different, so you obviously want to look into the specific details of your pension, but every pension has a monthly option or what we call a commuted value or a lump sum option. So that's standard across the board, but how those two options work might be slightly different. So obviously look into yours. So we're going to first look at what if you take the monthly option, which is probably what you thought you had to do if you didn't know that commuted value or a lump sum option was available to you. So like how does this kind of work? So typically with the monthly pension, they give you about 40 to 60% of your salary as a monthly pension, right? So you're living off of less than what you're living off of now. So something to consider. And the number that they show you is the gross amount. So that means it's before taxes. So say they show you $3,000 is the monthly amount that you're going to get. Don't forget that you're going to take off taxes as well. So maybe it's like $2,600, right? So all of that is pre-tax when you see it. So you really want to know like how much am I actually going to live off of? And like consider like can I even live off of $2,600 for the rest of my life, right? Some pensions do factor in inflation, but not all of them. And most of the time, it's determined on a yearly basis if they're going to increase it with inflation or not, right? So it might just be $2,600 for the rest of your life, right? You need to kind of see what that looks like. But obviously, life gets more expensive. We know, especially in the last few years, we've really seen this. And then one other thing is that the monthly amount isn't always guaranteed. And I know you're like, Kristen, what are you talking about? Pardon. So basically, this pension benefit guarantee fund, which says that they have to give you a minimum of $1,500 a month, and they have to be able to maintain this. But obviously, companies can go out of business. I'm not saying your pension's going to go out of business, but I'm saying it's definitely happened before. So if your company can't continue to give you that $1,500 a month, the government will step in and make sure you have that $1,500 a month. But $1,500 a month, like, it goes by fast, right? It's fast. So something to consider is when you're looking at your pension, is how much am I entitled to, and could it potentially change over time? Because I'm sure that you're aware that things are going to change in the next 40 to 50 years, right? Like even 40 to 50 years ago, like things are not the same.
Mhm.
So just a couple of pensions that are like pretty big ones here in Ontario. So there's Hoop and Omers. Hoop is more like nurses. Omers would be like firefighters, right? So Laura, you were with Omers probably, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you look at it, you want to make sure that your pension is funded properly. So what happens if a pension company goes out of business? Basically, they're underfunded. So what that means is they didn't have enough money to continue to pay out the amount that they were supposed to. So, but these numbers change. It can change yearly. So I looked up Hoop numbers. So when I first looked into this, this was in 2018. Hoop was overfunded 122%. So that means like for every dollar, they had an extra 22 cents left over, kind of idea. But today in 2024, it's only 117%. They're still overfunded, which is a great thing. But my point is just that it can change over time, right? Maybe next year it's less, and the next year after that it's more, right? It just really depends on the market as well, right? And how the market is doing. We
Mhm.
can dive into that too. So OMERS right now is 97% funded. And a lot of times when you hear about OMERS, you're like, the golden standard. Nothing is better than Omer's. I actually was just working with a firefighter. We'll go over his example. But a lot of times when we hear these things, it's the people that are telling us to have that interest of the pension company, right? They want you to kind of just go through the pension, right? So just think about like it, like you can, I literally just Googled this. Hoop, overfunded. Omer's overfunded or underfunded, right? You can look to see where your pension lies. So I'm not saying your pension is going to go out of business, just to clarify once again, but just to know that things can change, right? There's not always guarantees when we're expected it to be a guarantee.
Mhm.
So the next thing is that you don't have any control when you do monthly in terms of how much you get on a monthly basis. They say you're getting $3,000 a month or whatever your number is, right? If you work there longer, you're probably going to get more than if you work there for a shorter amount of time. But the other thing is you get no say over the investment. So obviously, when you're putting your money into your pension company every single paycheck or monthly, they invest in, right? They invest that money because they need it to grow. Otherwise, they're not going to be able to fund all these people, when they hit age 65.
Right.
So, but you don't have a say of where that's being invested. So,
That
if
makes
that's
sense
something,
then, Kristen, like what you were saying about being overfunded or underfunded, it also depends on how the stock market's doing,
exactly, that's right.
which
So,
is kind of a dicey thing right now.
yeah, so there's a lot of different things that happen, and like, so I was gonna talk about this a little later, but let me dive into that because I think it's really important. Is like some pensions pay 75% of the growth through when they're paying their pensions, it's on the growth of the investment. So 75% of the amount that's going towards the employees, right? Or the people that are retired. I'm sure they have a fancy name. It's off of the growth of the investment. So what happens if there's a bad year in the market? Right? What are they going to do? So, like, we think that there's no risk in having our money there, but there is a risk because your money is still invested. And if they're paying that much out of just the growth on the investment, then they need to take some risk, especially if the market isn't doing well, because they still need to make those returns,
Mhm.
right? So, like, do you really want to have a big risk when it comes to your retirement and like just to maintain your retirement fund?
Mm.
So, something to think about, right? Yeah.
Interesting with that, Kristen. And I obviously don't have a pension right now, but just thinking about this, if I was in that position, that piece of information alone, like really like makes it not as secure as you would think, right? And it just kind of like obviously having, regardless whatever the amount is afterwards, is amazing. The fact that you would still have that coming out like after you're retired. But I feel like it really just like for me personally, if I was in the situation of having a pension, I would be wanting to have multiple different streams of income, multiple different investments, like really like dispersing where you're making money and not just putting all eggs in one basket on
Yeah.
the pension plan for sure.
Yeah, and like a lot of my clients, they have an RSP or they're investing outside of their pension as well.
Mhm.
And like if we think about it logically, of course they're investing the money, right?
For
But when
sure.
we're just kind of in it, we don't think that
Yeah.
way,
You just kind of think
right?
that it's just going to be there, you know? It's like I don't even think like I ever would have thought about, oh, well, where is this money coming from?
Yeah,
It's like you just don't
right?
really like, I don't know. I just never would have thought that those
Yeah.
couple steps further. So it's
And something to think about too, it's like I haven't really done the research on this, but just logically from what I know about pensions is think of all the baby boomers that are retiring, right? There's a lot of people retiring right now that are going to have to draw from those pensions because they were told go to school, get a job with a pension,
Mhm.
right? So, how is that going to affect pension companies? Maybe they have a plan for that. Maybe they don't. I don't have the answer. But like I said, look into your specific pension, right? So the next thing is taxes, right? Like no matter how you get money when you retire, you're gonna pay taxes, right? Like we always say, there's only two things guaranteed in life: death and taxes, right?
So far, maybe we can get rid of the taxes at some point.
Yeah. I know our money is taxed so
I
many
know, as
times,
soon as and
but
it's illegal that they're actually doing it, but whatever. They kind of make
so
rules.
so something to look at when you have your pension, you're getting it paid out monthly, you have no way to mitigate those taxes because it's going directly into your account, right? So it's very hard for you to mitigate your taxes. And then as you hit 65, say you start taking CPP and OAS, Canadian Pension Plan, and Old Age Security, those are things that are going to help you get some more money with inflation, which is great, but it can bump you into a higher tax bracket. So let's use that example again where you're getting $3,000 a month. Okay, well, say you get CPP and it's $800 a month. The average is like $812 or $816 a month right now. And then you get OAS, and that's about $700. I'm just ballparking here, right? So that can bump you into a higher tax bracket because before that, if you retired at age 55, then maybe you were getting, we're going to talk about what's called a bridge benefit, but you weren't getting that full 4,500. So let me add those up for you. I just want to be really clear on this. So your pension is $3,000, your CPP is $800, and your OAS is $700. So if you add those all up, you're now at $4,500 a month, right? But they tax that, right? But that's going to look at as income. So that's over $50,000 a year that you're pulling in. So you're going to have taxes on that. But you don't have control in like terms of mitigating those taxes, and you have three sources of income now. Okay, so this is once you hit 65, right? But say you wanted to retire early. You want to retire at 55, but or 60 even, but you didn't want to take your CPP right away. So CPP, which I don't think we've talked about in any other episode, CPP you can take at 60, 65, or 70, anywhere kind of like between those ranges. So if you take it at 60, typically that's considered taking it early. You get a little bit less per month. If you take it at 70, you get a little bit more per month. So what happens if you retire early, but you're not getting your CPP? So the pension company is like, don't worry, we got you. Right? So if you retire before 65, they give you something that's called a bridge benefit. Say it's like six, seven, $800. So say you're getting, you know, your statement says that you'll get $3,600 a month, right? But what happens is that it's your $3,000 plus the $600 bridge benefit to equal that 36. So then when you turn 65, that $600 falls off. So when you hit 65, you're like, sweet, I'm going to get more money, my CPP, my OAS, but they actually take that bridge benefit off of it. So your income from your pension actually reduces at that time when you hit 65, because at say 55 you're getting 3600, then when you hit 65 now you're only getting 3000 from your pension. These are just example numbers. Your number is going to be different. Right? But like I mentioned, you were getting say $3600 a month, and now you're getting your CPP and OAS. So you went from your monthly income being 3600 to now you're in a higher tax bracket, that 4500. So the pension company gives you less money come 65, but you're paying more taxes because you have these other things. So you're kind of like stuck in this place where it's like hard to mitigate those taxes, right? There's definitely some solutions, but it's not going to be like necessarily as good as some other options we'll look at. In my opinion. Yeah. Always in my opinion. So does that all make sense? I explained that okay, Laura?
It does, yeah. It's really educational. Like
perfect.
educational, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because it's like we're not like again, we're just not taught these things,
And we don't
right?
think that far ahead, like
Totally.
I don't. I'm not thinking about like I'm 33 now. Even if I had a pension, I probably wouldn't be thinking about when I was retiring yet for those options, right? But it's like to know all of this stuff ahead of time is like gold, because then you can actually be responsibly like making decisions in your finance instead of being reactive when it comes time to retirement. So I think it's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing, and it's like this is not necessarily a decision you're just gonna make overnight. I have one client who literally like she did it pretty quickly. But for the most part, you're gonna want to like sit on it and really understand your options because you're talking about the rest of your life, say 65 to 90 years old, right? So it can last a long time. Okay. So then I want to look at is I'm going to give you like a little analogy for this one. So say you go to the bank and you want to get a mortgage. And then once you pay that mortgage off, you own the house. Fantastic. Great. But say it's you and your spouse, you and Joe, right? We're going to say. So whatever happens, Joe is the one getting the pension in this case, right? So when Joe passes away, the bank comes and is like, I'm so sorry for your loss. We're actually going to retain 40% of the equity of your home. Don't worry, you still get to live here. You don't need to pay us anything extra, but we just own 40% of your home now. I hope that's okay.
Not cool.
And then, right. And then when you die, just so you know, we're going to get the other 60% of your home. We're going to own the entire house. And your kids are just going to be left with nothing. So thank you. I'm really glad that you got this mortgage with us. Right? And you're like, what are you talking about? Would you ever take out a mortgage where you paid for it over 25 years? And then when your spouse dies, the bank takes a part of it. And then when you die, they own the whole house and your kids are left with nothing. That's how a pension can work, right? Again, look into your pension, but most pensions work this way. So what that means is Joe worked his entire life. He built up this pension. It's like worth, $1 million, right? He's has this big pension. It's kind of like a number that the company says that they're going to pay out for the rest of his life. But then when Joe passes away, the wife or his partner only gets 60% of that monthly amount. So he was getting, say, $3,000 a month. Now his wife is going to get less and only get 60% of that 3,000, right? And then when both of them pass away, nothing gets transferred to the kids.
Yeah.
So like, why
Example
did
is like massive. Like it's such a powerful example of like what happens, you know? And it was
yeah,
when we were talking about this episode, like previous to this, like it never really clicked in my brain as to like how crazy that is.
yeah, and it's like if you owned a house today, you're probably gonna sell it and invest it, and then your kids are gonna get whatever's left of that investment,
Mhm.
once both you and your partner pass away.
Yeah.
There's something left for your kids. You're leaving that legacy,
Yeah.
right? And in some pensions, once the pensioner passes away, that's the fancy word I was looking for. When the pensioner passes away, sometimes they'll only pay out for 15 years. So if you live for 15 years longer than your spouse, you get nothing after 15 years. They're like, good luck. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, I don't know. So that's heavy. I don't know. I have like no words. No
Yeah,
words.
yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm excited
So
that you're going over this, Kristen. Those of you listening, keep sticking around because like if this isn't clicking in your brain yet, what she's sharing, oh my gosh, it will. And when it does, oh, it's going to hit home. And there are so many other options that are going to set you and your family up for financial success.
and it might take just listening to it a couple times,
Yeah.
right? Or if you want to know more on like your one-on-one situation, like my calendar link is in the description. Feel free. I'm more than happy to like give you some information about your specific pension because just really good to know your options, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So based off of that analogy, right? We know that it's in the pension company's best interest for you to work as long as possible and die as early as possible, right?
It
Because
makes
then
sense
they,
with the whole way that everybody works.
right?
Like all of
They're
the
like,
work structures, it's insane.
like the longer you work, we don't have to pay out your pension. But if you die early, then we only have to pay out for 15 more years,
Yeah.
right? So it's just like something we don't think about. So it's really good to kind of know what your options are. And if you choose the monthly amount option, just know you're married to that option with no opportunity for divorce. You're stuck in that monthly option once you choose that monthly option. So it's like basically you're saying, I want the pension company to have full control over my money, not me. They can handle. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like that is very direct. I apologize, but that's pretty much what's happening, right?
It makes sense,
And
right? Everybody's like out for themselves, right? The pension companies are out for themselves, right? They want to save as much money as they can and make as much money as they can, right? And the employers are also out for themselves with the normal traditional work structures where it's all about output. You know, they don't really care about the employees' well-being. And I think that's kind of the revolution that's happening right now. Whereas it's like if we continue sticking with these structures and stuff, like our health does break down. I experienced that after 3 years. And obviously that wasn't just the 3 years in the job, it was accumulated for my entire life, right? From
right.
childhood, from the conditioning, right? But it comes to a point where you really have to step into owning your health, owning your financial situation, owning all of these things, which really allows you to create a different future for yourself, like completely.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And it's like our generation, Laura, like I feel like we're lucky in some aspects because we have the power of the internet and we can get
Mhm.
information that we need.
Yeah,
Like, not everything you find on the internet is true.
for sure.
Right?
Yeah.
But I think that's one advantage that we had over our parents, where they kind of just had to trust like the people that were telling them because they might not even know to look into something like this,
Hmm.
right? And
Yeah.
maybe you watching this didn't even know that you could look into something like this. And that's what we're here is just kind of like open up that conversation.
And I feel like we kind of have two options. We could either be resentful and angry toward the pension companies and the employers, or we can just step into our power and start making the changes that we want to make so that it sets
Exactly.
ourselves up and our families up, right? So it's like a lot of people get caught
Exactly.
in the resentment and in the anger, and they're like so focused on that. They're missing out on that piece of like really owning your shit and moving yourself forward in powerful ways. And it's like, that's going to create a big divide in where people go in the future is that emotional piece whether you're really
Yeah.
focused on what's not going right or you're opening yourself up to educate yourself and really move yourself forward.
Yeah, like how can I benefit my family so they're not in the position that I was,
Exactly. Yeah.
right? Yeah. Absolutely. And so that brings us to kind of talking about your other options, right? So your other option, as I mentioned, it's called commuting your value. And you're like, what the heck does that mean? That's okay. So basically taking your pension as a lump sum instead of a monthly amount. And everybody has this option. Somebody once told me that they wanted to commute their value in their employers that they didn't have that option. I feel really bad for them. They had to do monthly because they just weren't able to get the information that they needed. They didn't have somebody to help them guide through that. And that's what we do, right? So if you think that you don't have this lump sum option, you have it. You do. Um, so basically, what happens is your pension company will look at kind of the monthly amount and assign a value to it, right? So, say it's $1 million or $500,000 or $2 million. It really depends on how long you've been there. So, like, we say you were a nurse for 30 years, you might have like 1.1 million, right? Or it might be like we've had people, it was 2.2 million. I worked with somebody, it was almost 600,000, right? She had been a nurse for about 16 years at that time, right? So your pension, your commuted value, you can find normally on your pension website. So there is an age to commute your value. So you do have to make this decision typically before 65. Most companies are 50 to 55 when you have to make that decision. So if you're 54 today, look into this option. If you know somebody with a pension who is 54 or 49, kind of like right before those two ages, send them this episode, please. It's worth it for them to get the information.
Mm-hmm.
So those are some things. So say we looked at a nurse, she had, this is just like a made up example. I do have some client examples I'll show as well, but say it was like $1.1 million and we put that money into investments. We strategically put it into investments, right? Our goal is to help people get more per month out of their pension after taxes than they would have if they left it and took the monthly amount, and to be able to leave more money to their kids. It's if you do it properly, right? You need to know how to do it. And so say you can take out in this example $50,000 to $60,000 after taxes, right? In that previous example we showed $3,000 a month. Once you have CPP and OAS, it's $4,500 a month. It's just over $50,000 before taxes, right? So this is kind of like these two different scenarios. But in this scenario where you're taking it out as a lump sum, you're probably thinking like, but the taxes. Yeah, you're gonna pay taxes. But this difference is that you have strategic ways to mitigate your taxes. Because whether you take it out as a lump sum and pay taxes, or you take it out monthly, you're gonna pay taxes, right? Like
Just
I
that
said,
when it's all at once, but
yeah, like it hits you a different way, but when you run the math and
same.
you're like, that's okay, I have $1 million,
Yeah.
you're probably gonna still want to do it lump sum. Like
Yeah.
it's up to you. Do you see what's right for you? But we have unique strategic ways that are simple accounting principles that help reduce the taxes or mitigate those taxes. And it's over time, right? So the goal is that you have full control because you can have more flexibility with your taxes or have strategies around that. You can invest it wherever you choose. Like I know where Laura is invested, it's something that she really believes in, right? So you can invest it in different things. So it really depends on what you want to do. And so we want to make sure also that we're outperforming inflation. And so that's something that you don't always have the option to do when you take it monthly because they decide year to year if they're going to keep up with inflation. So we know that life gets more expensive. So that's one of the strategies is when you take it as a lump sum, you can kind of keep up with those inflations and you can kind of determine how much you want to take out on a monthly basis, right? So you can take out more sometimes or take out less sometimes. It doesn't have to be this fixed amount, which is actually like really interesting because what if your roof leaks and you're stuck getting your pension monthly and you're like, I don't know how much a roof costs. Thankfully, like I haven't had to
But
do that. But say it's like ten or $20,000 to get your roof fixed and you're getting your pension monthly. That means that you're gonna have to start saving some of that money if you don't have money saved for big expenses like this, right? Where if you take it out as a lump sum, you're like, Kristen, my roof leaked. I need $20,000. We're like, here you go. Let me send it to you.
mhm,
Right? So
mhm.
you have more flexibility. Or what if you're taking out money for Christmas or vacations or I don't know what you want to do during retirement. Maybe you want to like learn how to scuba dive. I don't know. Like whatever your options are. So you also don't need to worry about getting less money when CPP and OAS come in because you have full control, right? You're deciding how much you're taking on a monthly basis. Obviously, we run the numbers because you're like, Kristen, is my money ever going to run out? We run the numbers, right? I'm going to show you a client example where you're going to be like, oh my God, their money is going to run out. Let me show you that may or may not be the case. I'll show you. It's a
Yeah.
secret. Follow.
I think
Stay
too,
tuned.
Kristen, with everything that we've been sharing in this series, the sooner you can start on doing all of these various different ways to make more money, you won't even have to be worrying about whether your money's going to run out because you're going to have so much abundance there, right? It's just
Yeah.
implementing the strategies and like really making it a priority. Which with everything else happening in life, like it really has to be a conscious effort to make this a priority and learn and implement this stuff, right? It's easy to listen to it
Yeah.
and maybe even you don't even listen to it, or maybe you listen to it half-assed, but it's like taking the action steps to follow through and actually like implement this stuff. Like that's the big kicker that's going to make the big difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think that's like the biggest thing is it's like it's scary. We don't want to, but it's like just do it.
Yeah.
Just just find out your options because like with kind of like Laura said in the very beginning, do you want to live now or wait till you retire to live, right? Having these different options, right? So
Mhm.
the other really cool thing about this option is we talked about with monthly, once you choose it, you're married to that option. You cannot change it. With this option, there's strategies that if you're like, this is very overwhelming, I don't want this anymore. There's strategies that we have that can help you go back to doing it monthly with some security, right? So you can have some flexibility, essentially, right? So I hope that all makes sense. So kind of to wrap that up, you choose your investments, you're able to strategize around your taxes. You can decide how much you take out monthly. If you do it properly, you're going to have more money per month than if you were to take it out monthly. And then the last one is your kids are able to get anything that's left over when you pass away. You're leaving this legacy, where in the other option, they don't have that legacy,
Mhm.
right? So I want to go through some client examples, right? And we talked about not putting all your eggs in one basket. Like we don't know what CPP is going to look like by the time we retire, right? We just don't know what that looks like. So you want to have some strategies. So for example, I'm going to talk about a client. Let's call her Mary. Her name is not Mary, but she was in a hoop pension and she took her pension early. And what happened is she commuted her value because Hoop was making some big changes and we wanted to do it before all these changes happened. And what she was able to do is she was able to get another job at Hoop and she's in the pension again now. And we're going to commute her pension again when it is time, when she is, 50 for 55, whatever the numbers work out for her. Right. But what happened was she had a lot of life circumstances come up where she needed a lot of money. If we hadn't commuted her value, like who knows the situation, like thousands of dollars of debt I can imagine. And like she just said to me, I'm like getting goosebumps. So like she said to me one day, she's like, I thank God for you all the time because like she wouldn't have been able to do this if we hadn't met,
Mm-hmm.
right? And we only knew each other a couple weeks before we did this transition for her, but it completely changed her life. And like even though she took out this money, she's still on track for retirement, which is super cool without even factoring the money she's getting when we commute her value again.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just really powerful. Another client, let's call him Doug, not his name's not Doug, but he was in Omer's, as I mentioned. And so with Omer's, you can have your pension and then you could also contribute to an RSP, right? So you can put some extra money in for retirement. And he was always told that it was the golden ticket, like that was the standard, right? So his RSP, he was like, nothing can beat an Omer's RSP. I was like, okay, really? And we doubled the return last year from what Omer's got. I was like, but I just asked him, I was like, who told you that this was the golden standard? And he was like, yeah, that's fair. Like he didn't even answer the question, right? He was like, yeah, okay, I get it. So, but these are the things is that like we don't know until we see our options.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, this can be a very emotional decision, but in my experience, mathematically, it works out in the best interest for our clients. And I want to share a client example so you can kind of get an idea of what that looks like. So I'm just going to share this in terms of like what it could look like as commuting your value. So this is somebody who, after their taxes were paid, ended up with $1.4 million that we were able to invest for them. So obviously they need income. This is after they've been invested for 9 years. So all of these numbers are within 9 years, right? So income, the first year, they took out $4,800 or $48,000 a year. And then they were like, this is not enough. We want to take out $62,000 a year, right? So from year 2 to year 9, they every year they're in retirement. They want to do things with their life. So they took out $6,000 a year for Christmas. They took out $6,000 a year for 2 vacations a year, right? They love to vacation. And they also took out $5,000 for a 6-week road trip to Tennessee, right? So they vacationed, right? They're living their life. But then they had some other unexpected expenses or things that weren't necessarily planned for when we originally had done this plan. So they wanted to build a new garage. They needed $25,000. They bought a new boat. We joke about boats all the time,
We do.
right? They bought a new boat. $25,000. They needed a new truck to pull the boat, right? $30,000. They're like, well, we might as well get a new fifth wheel, right, for their road trip. $12,000. So for income, they took out almost 5 right? So say $547,000 for their yearly expenses in total over these 9 years, 150,000, and these other expenses were $92,000. Now, when I first showed Laura this, she was like, "What?"
I'm like, what irresponsible decisions were that? Why would they spend that much money on a boat, a garage, a truck, and a fifth wheel? But I have a completely different perspective now.
So let me show you, right? This is where it gets really interesting. So in total, they took out almost $800,000, right? And you're like, oh my God, how much money do they have left? Like, are they gonna be able to survive? Well, after 9 years, they actually had $1.5 million left in their account. So we grew it by $100,000, even though they had taken out $800,000. And like, yes, we're talking about $1.4 million, but like, if your number is smaller, maybe you don't take out $6,000 for Christmas, right? Maybe it's 2,000. But it's just looking at like, what are those options for you?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like what does that look like? And that's what I mean is like when I say if you do it properly, because I met somebody. I'm gonna take this down so I can see you guys again. So I met somebody, and when I met them, they were like, "Oh, my financial advisor told me it wasn't worth it for me to commute my value." And I like nearly had a heart attack. I'm like, "Your financial advisor, in my opinion, doesn't know anything about commuting value." Because if you run the numbers, I've never come into a situation where it doesn't make sense. That
Mhm.
doesn't mean there aren't situations where it doesn't make sense. Don't get me wrong, but it's knowing what the options are.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
there's a
I
lot. Go ahead, Laura. Yeah.
say I love that example because like when you do it properly, like you said, you're sitting down and looking at what this looks like and you're making a plan. So like you're making decisions knowing what the final outcome's going to be. It's not like you're just receiving this money and then you're blindly spending it. And yeah, you're probably going to run out of money by the end, right?
Yeah.
It's like you may not have enough, but with this, it's really like, okay, like what is it that I'm wanting? Like I don't
Yeah.
just want to be scraping by for the next little bit. And with that too, like for me, I'm like, okay, well, if I know that this is what it's going to be, if that doesn't seem like enough, even though I want to live the way that I want to live, I will find other ways to make more money even while this is going on, right? Like I
Yeah.
know a lot of people as well that they've already have plans for after they're done retiring where they want to have I have a friend who wants to have a tree farm. So he's already starting to like get his farm ready for like having a tree farm so that he can do that for fun after he's retiring. So it's like there's really
Yeah.
limitless options, but like I just love this because it's like you get to really live, but then
Yeah.
also being smart around what you do with your life and not just blowing it all or running out or just like doing it frivolously, you know?
Yeah. I think that's a really interesting point because it's like, do you take it monthly and you like have a certain amount coming in every single month and that gives you security? Or you take it as a lump sum and you have a certain amount coming in every single month and it gives you security?
Mhm.
Like it's just like when you're taking it as a lump sum, you just maybe need to have a little bit more discipline or like have somebody run the numbers, be like,
Yeah.
can I take 6 grand a month for or 6 grand a year for Christmas every year? Right? It's like running the numbers, but like if you know that this is like your long-term game plan, it's like, well, would you rather have, four or five or $6,000 a month or $3,000 a month? And like
Mm-hmm.
again, it's like your numbers are your numbers, but it's having flexibility and just like
Yes.
what the goal is. So if you're like, my goal is to have enough money for the rest of my life, well, then you're gonna make sure that you have enough money for the rest of your life, right? You're not gonna be crazy. You're not gonna be like, buy a castle in, France or something, right?
I would
So
Napoleon.
right.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's just like looking at those options. And that kind of leads me to the homework. Thank you everyone for just being patient. I know this is a little bit of a longer episode for us, but I just think it's really valuable to understand.
Yeah.
So my
Before you get into
research,
the homework, Kristen, can I
yeah,
share one
sure.
more thing?
Yeah.
I think it's really cool too, just to like have that control over your own finances, because like it gets to be fun, like where you want to invest your money. And I know for me, it's always important, and I know you know this, like what you're investing into isn't moving the world forward. Instead of just like allowing it to go into a company's hand and they're investing into the ones that they're going to make the most money with, like even though it's going to be you making that money, it's like you can do it with making money, but also aligning it with where you want the world to go because money does make the world go around, right? Like that is a
Yeah.
saying and it is true, right? So it's like,
Yeah.
it's exciting when you can kind of like, for me anyway, to be able to like pick and choose like what my portfolio looks like and where I want to invest and this and that. And it's like, it becomes like fun. Like you're doing more than just receiving money. You're actually moving the world forward in cool ways.
Yeah, I love that. And that's something that I really love is like stand for your values,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So, so one thing that I want you to do, viewer watching, thank you again for sticking around to the end. Do some research and just see what makes the most sense for you and your family, and discover how you can get more out of your pension. Like, what are your options? And lastly, is look and see what your commuted value number is. Because especially if you've been at your job for a long time and you have, say, it's like $1 million, that's gonna be pretty exciting. if I like, I'm just thinking for myself. I'm like, if I was like, oh, I have, 1.1 million dollars, like, okay, yeah, send it my way.
Totally.
Well, let me know. So yeah, I think it's really interesting, and like do the homework and just know what your options are. And Laura, you were saying about just like taking action,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And just
Wow.
like, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, I feel like this is something that you definitely have to wrap your head around. So, like, taking your time to do it and just like weighing out the options of like what's good for you is gonna be
Yeah.
best.
And just know that it can be a very emotional process. It
Hmm.
can feel really scary and overwhelming, especially you're like, oh, it's $1 million. Like, I don't know how to manage $1 million. Like, work with somebody who knows how to manage $1 million, right? Like, find that person that can help guide you through the process, right?
Yeah.
Whether that's me or somebody else that you trust, right? Like, obviously, that's what we do, and that's how I have this knowledge. But you have to work with somebody that you trust and you love, because you need to know that you're going to be taken care of, and it is a big decision, and just like getting the right information. And like I said, like, I've run into people where their financial advisor like told them that it wasn't the best thing for them, where like I looked at the numbers and it would have been really good. So it's like really seeing your options. Like, if one person's telling you one thing, maybe get a second opinion, right? Because at the end of the day, you have to do what's right for you, whether your financial advisor is your best friend or your brother or your uncle,
Yeah.
right? It's what's gonna work best for you and your family at the end of the day, and what's gonna hold true to your values.
Mhm.
So yeah, thank you again just for taking the time to connect with us. If you have any questions around pensions, please comment them below. I'd be more than happy to answer them. Obviously, everybody's situation is very different, so if it does mean something that's specific to your situation, might require jumping on a call, but I'll do my absolute best to respond in the comments. And make sure to like and subscribe. We've had so many episodes around finance. Actually, Laura, I'm gonna throw you a curveball. Do you have a favorite episode from all the ones that we've recorded so far?
Ah, it's hard
On
to
the
say
spot.
because I get so excited with all of them because I love knowledge because I'm like knowledge is power, another one of those sayings, right? Like I
Yeah.
love this series because I'm learning so much along this as well. Like I have lots to learn about finances and I'm learning so much through this series, which is why I'm so excited to be kind of bringing this to more people. So I honestly, nothing's coming through to me our favorite episodes beside
Not
this
a
one right
favorite.
now because I was like,
Yes.
that's like a mic drop.
Yes.
But there's many mic drop moments in a lot of them. So definitely go through
Yeah.
in the description of this video. You'll see all of the past episodes and you can just go and like go click on the ones that resonate with you or something that you're wanting to dive into and explore it. And if you feel like there's other people that you feel would value from this series, then definitely share it out to them.
Yeah, that would be amazing, because the
There's
more
room at
people
the
that we
top
can
for all of us.
educate. Yeah,
Hmm.
it's like it's all about education, and people can't be educated if they don't even know that you don't know what you don't know, let's say, right?
Yeah.
So that's beautiful. So share this episode with somebody that you know that can value, would be another piece of homework.
Mhm.
So thank you again for watching and learning all about pensions, and just take some time to feel into your heart around your finances, and we'll see you on the next episode. Take
Bye.
care.
See
Bye.
ya.